what are some of the things you liked about Chicago?
Oh, the Art Institute.
And one of the things I know that you and I share is Chicago.
This is true.
Really distinct goals. Our primary interest was in campaign finance reform, but we were also interested in election law and in civil union.
Have better and cleaner politics in Oregon. Dan, good to have you on Speaking Frankly. You know, that's the thing is, we as human beings live together on this planet Earth.
Right.
We also live together in our societies, in our nations, in our communities. Well, greetings. Here we are in the month of December, and Christmas is coming up very quickly now, but so far, we've had no snow, really, right here, at least in McMinnville. And now, as we get prepared for things to put under the Christmas tree, we also need to be prepared for thinking about our history, what we as a people have been about. And I'm so pleased that today I have a good friend of mine, Mike Sullivan, who's been very active in the labor movement. Mike, good to have you on Speaking Frankly.
Glad to be here, Frank.
I know you always do.
Yes.
Speak frankly.
I do.
Now, the other thing is you and I both go back to days in Chicago.
Yes.
Now, were you born in Chicago?
Yes, I was born in Lyon Hospital on Chicago, University of Chicago's campus, in fact.
I know that hospital, for heaven's sake. Well, you know, I lived there and directed a Baptist graduate student center there at the University of Chicago. It's one of my favorite cities in the United States. But of course, in terms of weather, I wouldn't trade McMinnville, Oregon for Chicago in the wintertime.
Well, this is true, as you're familiar with the phrase, if you don't like the weather in Chicago, wait 5 minutes, it'll change. This person should have come to Oregon.
Right. Well, now,
as you're familiar with the phrase, if you don't like the weather in Chicago, wait 5 minutes, it'll change. This person should have come to Oregon.
Right. Well, now, tell me, you lived on the south side of Chicago.
85th Street.
85th Street, yeah. Well, I lived just north of the campus of the University of Chicago, and in what was initially a millionaire's mansion. He was the owner of Sears Roebuck Company, and had this occupied practically 1/3 of a city block with the land. Later, I was able to acquire that from the city and develop a Baptist graduate student center for students working on their master's and PhD degrees at the University of Chicago, and could live there at lower costs. They had to walk to the campus, which was about a mile south, not quite, and they could get breakfast and the evening meal, but not lunch there. But they were enabled to, if they were good students, and all of them were, they had scholarships toward their tuition, but this provided a low-cost living arrangement for them to continue working on graduate degrees. So this was a great part of my life, and I appreciated having that opportunity, to say nothing about how great I think it is to live in Oregon. Yeah.
I agree, and to your point about higher education and the importance of it, I developed a memorial in 2007 called Free Higher Education for All. It was modeled after the Labor Party's theme, and basically it was the design of a guy named Tony Mazzocchi.
Oh.
Being a World War II veteran at 17, he went to war.
Yes.
Came back, he got the GI Bill.
Yes.
So I put that forth to the legislature.
Yes.
And to my astonishment, a lot of the conservatives said to me, but this is just an entitlement. My answer to that was, yes, it will entitle these young people to have a better income so they can pay more taxes to the U.S. Treasury. It took 45 minutes of debate, but it did pass out of the
Let me
House.
congratulate you. Good for you.
Yeah.
And good for us.
Yeah, we need more of it. I mean,
Yes.
higher education now is 90% higher than it was 20 years ago.
Oh, yes.
And, you know, as a father who's helped put our children in through public education, I can tell you honestly, it is not free.
Well, you see, that's it. Having grown up in 4 rooming houses, my mother having grown up in a logging camp in Michigan, you see, I can appreciate the problems and difficulties of people who live on very low incomes, moving ahead, especially with their children, moving ahead in education. But the great thing in Grand Rapids during the Depression was we had first-rate public schools. My grade school is still standing. 3-story red brick building, occupies 1/3 of a city block, 2/3 is the playground, etc. My high school is still standing, occupies a whole city block. And they took out the gymnasium inside, and they now have a parking structure there. It's so popular. When I was there 2.5 years ago with my wife Barbara, they were building 3 more condominiums on the roof. You know, it was that well built, you see.
Yeah.
See, this is one of the things so important for us in a democracy to make sure we have good, available public education for each generation so that all young people can move ahead with their lives, develop talents and capacities to be good citizens serving not only themselves but the whole community.
Yes, and public education is the great equalizer in our society. And without it, those that are poor are destined to remain poor. It
Yeah.
gives everybody a hand up, not a hand out.
Yes. Now, tell me, as you've come here to live in Oregon, tell me a little bit about your work in the labor movement.
Well, I started out on the Safety and Health Committee for Steel Workers Local 8378, which represents the workers of Cascade Steel.
Yes.
I was vice president and then president for 6 years. I headed up the political wing of the state steelworkers called the Legislative Education Committee. I've been president of the Polk, Marion, and Yamhill County Central Labor Council. In 2000, I got a degree in labor history from the National Labor College in the George Meany Center. And presently, I am the political director in Oregon for the Association of Western Pulp and Paper Workers, which we have a plant right up north of us
Yes.
in Newburgh,
Yes.
which I might add went bankrupt, and they now have new owners.
I see.
The pulp and paper, the industry itself is in dire straits due mainly to the horrible trade agreements that the country has entered into. The Chinese government is subsidizing their pulp and paper industries, raising the price of scrap paper to the point that mills in this country and Canada cannot compete. So now the machinery, in one case in Washington State, state-of-the-art paper-making machine was provided for by the taxpayers of the state of Washington, was moved lock, stock, and barrel to China and put online in China and is presently sending paper worldwide.
See, what you have just lifted up, these are some facts that the general public doesn't know. And it's one of the reasons why it's so important that we have public access TV
Absolutely.
here in Oregon, and that here in McMinnville, we have one of the best stations. Now, there are only 3 stations in the Portland area, 1 in Salem, the capital of the state, and 1 here. So we have only 5 public access stations. We should have 20 public access TV stations in Oregon, so the public in general, with different points of view, can learn what's going on in our social and political life right where we live.
Absolutely.